Dear friends, Namaskar. I am Sanjay Mansukhani from Kolkata, and I am a teacher of Patanjali Yoga Sutras. From today onwards, we will cover the third chapter on Vibhutis from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Vibhutis are mystic powers, supernatural powers which a yogi acquires in the process of his sadhana to reach the ultimate state of yoga, the ultimate state of Kaivalya, complete liberation from nature, from Prakriti. In this process, there are three main limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, the eight-limbed yoga, which play a very crucial role to reach the state of mystic powers. These three last limbs are Dharana, Dhayana and Samadhi. These three limbs are also called the internal limbs of Ashtanga. Internal because they have to do completely with the inner world, with the inner mind. The first five angas are connected with the outer world and they are called Bahiranga. The outer five limbs of yoga are Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayam and Pratyahara. In these five limbs, progressively, gradually, we find that stage by stage, step by step, the mind starts moving in from the outer to the inside. In the stage of Yama, the first anga, it is completely outside, connected to society. In the second stage of Niyama, the second limb of Niyama, the mind is working at a personal level, maintaining personal discipline. In the third level, the mind has come into the body, the asana. In the fourth level, the fourth limb, the mind has reached the state of breathing and controlling that breathing. In the fifth stage, the mind is powerful enough to come completely from the outside, the outer world, to the inside, the inner world. The mind has been brought in by controlling the senses. The senses are not running on their own to the world outside. The senses are completely controlled by the mind and they behave and they remain on the inside, focused on the inside. Once the mind has come in from 100 objects in the outer world, it has to be brought to one place so that further work can be done on the mind. So you can understand that the mind, when it is out there looking at 100 objects, jumping around like a monkey from object to object, once when it is brought in, it is disciplined, it has a tendency of still jumping around, but that tendency is substantially reduced. In order to control that, the mind is focused on a place. And as the mind remains focused on a place, it remains disciplined, it remains controlled, and then it learns to behave and be at a single place. So you can understand this by considering that my mind was outside and now I have brought it inside, and I have a calendar sheet in front of me, and that calendar has 30 dates of the month on it. And I'm focusing my mind, say on the date 5. Now my mind though it is on the page of the calendar, I'm trying to bring it to number 5. It will jump around. It might go to 1, then come back to 5. It might go to the date number 3 and then come back to 5. Or it might go to 6 and then come back to 5. Or it might stay at 5 for some time and then again disappear and jump up and go to 30. And then it is again brought back to 5. So this is what concentration is about. We have brought the mind from the outer world where it was jumping all around to one place, and here we are training it so that it can focus at one point and be stuck there and can stay there. So this is what dharana is about. This is what concentration is about. And now when the mind has been brought to one place, say when the mind has started hovering around the number 5 on that sheet of calendar, staying on the number 5 for a long duration of time without any interruption, without any distraction, is called dhyana, is called meditation. So meditation, in fact, is a deeper and a higher form of concentration. This can be understood with the example of honey. If honey is poured from one container to another container, honey is viscous, honey is thick, and when it is poured, the flow does not break, the flow does not stop, the flow is continuous without a break. This is the kind of flow which one finds during dhyana, during meditation. The mind keeps on flowing to one point or to one image continuously, without a break, without any form of distraction. And concentration, on the other hand, is like water being poured from one container to other container. The water will flow drop by drop, will flow in an uneven manner. There will be breaks, and sometimes the water flow will be fast, sometimes it will be slow. So that is what concentration is like. Concentration, there can be a break in the flow of the mind. There can be distractions in the flow of the mind. There can be intensity increase in concentration and intensity decrease in concentration. But meditation, the focus is one-pointed. The object of meditation is one, and there is no deviation, there is no distraction. It's a continuous flow. When this one-pointed flow is further continued without any break for again a long duration of time, then we find that this mind enters a state of samadhi. The samadhi it enters in is such that the yogi who is meditating forgets the name of the object he was meditating on. The yogi forgets the description of the object he was meditating on. The yogi even forgets who he is, what is his name. The yogi even forgets where he was, what is the time. He is completely cut off from the mind. He has no idea of what is happening in the world outside. His mind has virtually disappeared from there. But the only thing which remains with him is the object in its specific nature, the object with its particular nature. The object has done away with the name. The yogi does not remember the name of the object. The object does not indicate to the yogi any description of the object. It is the plain, simple object which is there in front of the yogi's mind, and his mind is absorbed in it. One good way of understanding this can be a crystal. A transparent crystal. Once if it is kept in front of, say, a red flower, then the entire red flower is reflected in that transparent crystal. And this is what happens to the yogi's mind when he is in this state of samadhi. Here, his mind has only the object inside it. The object has got absorbed in the mind. And this state of samadhi, this state of meditation is called nirvitark samadhi. What it means is, here it is a physical form of meditation. There is a physical awareness in the yogi, but that physical awareness is not with the associated name of the object and the description of the object, the idea about the object. It is only and only the object alone in its own specific nature. So this is what happens in samadhi. The mind disappears. Now the object of all forms of samadhi is to slowly and steadily reduce the intensity of the mind, the functionality of the mind, and ultimately, when the mind is completely free of the mind, when the samadhi is completely free of the mind, that is the stage which is called nirbhit samadhi. Now there is no trace of the mind at all, and there is no trace of the object also. But in the initial stages, when the mind is present to some extent, one finds the 6 states of samadhi in which the mind is present. The first is the vitark samadhi. In the vitark samadhi, the object is present and the yogi has a physical awareness of the object. He remembers the name of the object. He remembers the description of the object. In the second stage, which is the nirvitark samadhi, he only remembers the object itself and he forgets everything else. In the third state is the savichar samadhi. In the savichar samadhi, the yogi just remembers thoughts, just remembers the subtle part of the object. That is, he is into the tanmatras. The tanmatras are subtler than the object. The object is a gross form. The object is made up of gross elements of prakriti, whereas the tanmatras are made up of subtle elements of prakriti. So in this state, a yogi remembers the tanmatras. He remembers the energies at the subatomic level which constitute our senses. And in the next form of samadhi, which is the nirvichar samadhi, here the yogi loses all contact with any form of shape and any measurement of time. So his understanding of this samadhi, his experience of this samadhi is across all time and across all space. After this, the next samadhi is a kind of a sattvic samadhi. And in this samadhi, the yogi feels bliss, a yogi feels happiness. So, if we look at these 3 different kinds of samadhis which one has come through, the first which is connected to the physicality, the second which is connected to the mental aspect, and the third which is beyond the mental aspect. So the first one is connected in a way to tamas, which is the form part of nature. The second one is connected to the mind, which is mainly the changingness part of the nature, of prakriti. And the third one, where he experiences bliss, where he experiences ananda, is connected to the sattva part, to the goodness part, to the buddhi part, to the intellect part of the chitta. And here he then moves on to the next stage, which is the 6th form of samadhi, which is called the asmita samadhi. Here he has a realization that he is self-aware and he is the person who is meditating. In this form of samadhi, his awareness is very close to the soul, very close to the Purusha, but not exactly with the Purusha. So these are the 6 stages, first 6 stages of samadhi. And in these first 6 stages of samadhi, we find that the yogi is having the presence of the mind. whatever he is experiencing is getting recorded. He is building sanskaras, and this recording, these sanskaras, constitute the bija, the seed, through which life moves on, through which the karma, the actions take place. But the seventh form of samadhi is the nirbhit samadhi. In the nirbhit samadhi, there is no seed at all. There is no presence of the mind at all. And that is the ultimate and the highest form of samadhi. So, dear friends, we find that in these three limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, the Dharana, the Dhyan, and the Samadhi, the mind is going deeper, the mind is achieving higher and higher levels of concentration, and then it reaches such a state of concentration that the mind by itself simply disappears from the scene. The mind no longer is active. So these are the three last limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, and these three limbs are called the internal limbs of Ashtanga. They have been covered in the chapter on siddhis. So there has been a question, why did Patanjali cover the first five limbas, the first five limbs, the first five angas in the chapter on sadhana, and why has he put the last three limbs, the last three asanas on the chapter of siddhis? This is so because it is only when one practices dharana, dhyana, and samadhi together at one place in one time, then one reaches the state which is called samayama. Samayama is a state which happens immediately after samadhi, and in this state the mind is connected to intuitive powers. The ego gets connected to the knowledge available in the Purusha and starts receiving it through intuition. And this intuitive knowledge is knowledge which is beyond the knowledge of the sense organs, which is beyond the knowledge which is normally available in Prakriti, in the sensory world. So this knowledge is a kind of a supernatural knowledge. This knowledge is a kind of a mystic knowledge. And this knowledge in turn gives mystic powers to a yogi. It gives him the siddhis. It gives him the uncanny abilities, the uncanny powers which are normally not heard of in modern civilization. So, because of samayama and because these three last limbs bring about samayama, it seems Patanjali has put these three last limbs together in the Vibhuti chapter, in the chapter of siddhis. Another important thing to notice here is that these three are called the higher form of yoga, and the first five limbs of yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, and pratyahara are called the lower forms of yoga. So normal people who want to bring about an element of control in their minds should bring their mind from the outer world inside and then work on it. And that is the stage by stage progress steps which Patanjali has highlighted. But if one is looking for the higher path, if one is looking to acquire siddhis, mystic powers, supernatural powers through the practice of yoga, or if one is looking for liberation, kevalya, moksha, freedom, absolute independence from Prakriti at all times, in that case one has to practice dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. And as you practice dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, you find your mind goes through successive stages of higher and higher samadhi. And as the mind goes through successive stages of higher and higher samadhi, it picks up more powerful insights. It is said in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras that a yogi can have 7 levels of insight, and his 7 levels of insight gives him deep mystical powers. Now, how can these 7 levels of mystic knowledge appear? You see, evolution, Prakriti by itself, has pushed us out, and it has evolved this whole creation. So, how has Prakriti pushed us out? When the Purusha has come close to the Prakriti, Prakriti has started the process of evolution. And when Prakriti starts the process of evolution, the first seed of this creation is called Mahat. Mahat means the great principle. This great principle, this cosmic seed, creates the whole cosmos. And this whole cosmos by itself creates Ahankar. Ahankar is the doership. Ahankar is the possession of the action. He is the possessor of the action. He is the owner of the action. So here we see in the first stage, what comes out is Mahat. In the second stage, what evolves out of Mahat is Ahankara. And Ahankara by itself, because it wants to do, it wants to create action, it starts creating a paraphernalia of support, it starts creating its own infrastructure so that it can act in the world. So in the third stage, we have the mind. Mind pops up, and then we have the sense organs. So these sense organs by themselves are connected to the mind. They receive signals from the mind and they respond back to the mind. So this mind and then the organs of action, they together start perceiving the world outside, the physical creation outside, which is made up of the 5 gross elements. The 5 gross elements of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And as these 5 elements are formed by the interaction between Ahankara, the doership, and the Tanmatras, one finds that the whole creation has come into place. And this whole creation which has come into place, if one has to achieve yoga, then one has to put all the fluctuations of the mind, all the thoughts in the mind to rest. And as one starts this process of putting the mind to rest, the thoughts to rest, what it actually means is to stop the mind from functioning, to close the mind. So step by step, as the yogi recedes from the world outside to his sense organs, then to his mind, then to Ahankara, and then to the Mahat, and then to Prakriti, and finally to Purusha. So these are the stages in which his awareness shifts. And as this awareness is shifting after receiving the first initial form of Samadhi, we find his level of insight, his access to Pragya, intuition, keeps on going up and up. And as his Pragya, as his intuition keeps on going higher and higher, the yogi reaches a stage where he has become independent of Prakriti in all totality. Because of the knowledge so received, he has been able to free himself from Prakriti, from the various stages of Prakriti. And all these stages of Prakriti now dissolve. They go back into Prakriti's original primordial form. They go back to their original state of existence. And this leads to the final liberation. So dear friends, we see that it is Dharana, Dhayana and Samadhi which empowers a yogi through Samayama to acquire mystical powers, to acquire supernatural powers. And once a yogi acquires these kind of supernatural powers, mystical powers, and is able to control himself and not misuse those powers, he goes further ahead. So essentially, Dharana, Dhyan and Samadhi is the chariot in which the yogi can traverse the higher paths of yoga, can go deep into various stages of siddhis and then go further deep on the journey of liberation and then finally achieve moksha, achieve liberation, achieve kevalya. So, dear friends, these three, dharana, dhyan, and samadhi, these are in a way the toughest part of the whole yoga. It is probably easy in comparison to perform yamas, to perform the niyamas, to do the asana, to do pranayam, to practice pratyahara, but to actually be able to bring the mind, which is difficult to bring at one place, to be able to do that is by itself an achievement. And once you have been able to do that, to hold it there for a long duration of time is another bigger achievement. And holding it there sufficiently so that after some time the mind starts disappearing, there is no mind. And we initially only have the identity, the look of the object, and no other trace, no other information in the yogi's mind. That is one of the higher stages which happens when one practices samayama, when one practices dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Therefore, dear friends, let me tell you, these three stages are not easy to be done. And it may take somebody number of years, maybe 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, to be able to sit on the seat of meditation. Meditation, as we see, is the 8th step in the Ashtanga Yoga process. So to reach the 7th step and be there and practice meditation, dhyana, is a stage which requires a lot of hard work, a lot of sadhana, a lot of spiritual cleaning, so that one is able to move further ahead confidently on this path. Therefore, these are the areas where normally ordinary practicing yogis do not traverse, they do not go here. They remain contented by doing the Kriya Yoga, by following the first 5 angas of Ashtanga Yoga, and it is only the yogis who want to go higher up the path. One can say those yogis who want to do their schooling and graduation in yoga, they practice the lower forms of yoga, and those students who want to go further ahead and get their masters and get their PhD in yoga, for them it is important that they actually do these practices, gain sufficient proficiency in these practices, and then they move ahead on the path of yoga without any, I would say, fear, without any doubt, full of faith, full of energy, with full memory of the path, and then they reach the higher and the higher stages. So, dear friends, we have seen that these 3 limbs are the most important limbs, the most powerful limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, but not everybody can do them. So it is always advised that people who are serious, people who want to go higher up, people who want to achieve kevalya or the siddhis must only practice these steps. For other people, the Kriya Yoga is suggested, and if you are a bit more serious, then you can do the 5 limbs, the first 5 limbs of Ashtanga. Dear friends, by doing these Ashtanga Yoga practices, by doing Dharana, Dhayana and Samadhi, one is able to remove sorrow from one's mind permanently. And that is the real goal of yoga, to be able to remove sorrow from the mind permanently, completely. And once one does that, then one experiences a state of permanent happiness. Our goal, our target in doing these talks is specifically to bring to your notice the importance of achieving permanent happiness in today's world, and the efficacy of yoga and Sankhya, by which permanent happiness can be experienced in today's world, and one can, after learning, explain it to one's family members, to members of our society, to members of our country, and to people of our world at large. By doing that, we will be providing them great service, and this service will take humanity forward, will take us closer to Satyuga, the golden age. So therefore, I thank you for being here today, listening to this talk, and I hope to see you again tomorrow at 7 p.m. for a subsequent talk from Vibhuti part of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And I also wish and pray that you achieve your permanent happiness very quickly, and may God bless you for your nobleness and kindness. Thank you so much. God bless you, and see you tomorrow. Thank you.